Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. We are totally skipping the long, boring intros today because honestly, we need to jump straight into one of the most absurd, chaotic, and downright hilarious stories we've ever covered. Picture this, right? A high-stakes criminal underworld where precision, secrecy, and elite skills are literally everything. Now take all of those qualities, throw them completely out the window, and replace them with pure, unadulterated mayhem. As you'll see, we're looking at a wildly entertaining source story that proves sometimes the absolute worst possible team can miraculously stumble into the biggest possible score. Seriously, how did a deaf, dumb, and blind trio go from getting beaten up in a local police station to uncovering a multi-crore gold secret? That's the exact chaotic narrative arc we are about to explore today. It's a story of mistaken identity, wildly unearned confidence, and the kind of spectacular disaster that you really couldn't write if you tried. If you've ever tried to coordinate a simple task with your friends where absolutely no one listens, just imagine doing that while trying to pull off a felony. Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, Meet the Chaotic Trio. To understand why literally everything in this story goes spectacularly wrong, we need to look at the ultimate comedic engine of our narrative. We've got three protagonists, and each has a physical trait that becomes a massive disadvantage in any high-stakes scenario. First up, the blind character. He physically cannot see who he's hitting, so when a brawl breaks out, he's just constantly throwing punches at his own friends. Then the deaf character. He can't hear warnings, approaching sirens, or plans changing on the fly. And finally, the mute character cannot communicate under pressure. He can't even scream out to alert his team. You know, individually, these are tough everyday challenges, but put them together as a mercenary team trying to coordinate an attack, it's like trying to assemble complex furniture in the pitch dark, with no instructions and everyone speaking a different language. It's an absolute recipe for disaster. Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the police station clash. So early on, the trio gets into a massive street brawl. And naturally, because of their unique dynamic, the blind character accidentally attacks people he absolutely shouldn't, and the whole crew ends up dragged into police custody. Just picture the scene. They're sitting there, completely battered, bruised, and surrounded by angry officers trying to interrogate them. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer absurdity of the situation. The interrogating officer turns to his superior and literally says, "Sir, they must be terrorists. We broke a tooth and they didn't even squeak." Now, what's really interesting here is how this misunderstanding is pure comedic genius. The trio is being heavily beaten by the police during this intense interrogation, but because the mute character physically cannot scream out in pain, he takes the severe beating in total stoic silence. Meanwhile, the deaf character can't hear the interrogator's violent threats or barking questions, so he just sits there staring blankly ahead. The police, totally unaware of their actual physical conditions, misinterpret this absolute silence as extreme terrorist-level resilience. They genuinely believe these guys are highly trained, hardened operatives who absolutely refuse to break under torture, when in reality, they just literally cannot respond. They've accidentally failed their way into looking like the ultimate badasses. Let's move right along to Section 3, the Kelvin contract. Because of this accidental tough guy reputation they just built at the police station, they attract a very unexpected and very high-paying client right after they're released. We're introduced to our antagonist with this incredible line. "Myself, Kelvin. Not just a name, it's a brand." I mean, come on. He talks like he's the main character in a movie he wrote himself. The level of delusion and self-importance is entirely off the charts. Kelvin has an ego the size of a mountain and an unearned swagger to perfectly match it. He tracks down our bruised and battered trio shortly after their release from custody. The terms of the job are wild, guys. He tells them he needs a highly specific target, a man named Samir, captured and brought back to him completely alive. And the kicker? To ensure these hardcore operatives take the job, Kelvin offers an irresistible 4 times the normal market rate for a kidnapping. Now, does our trio stop for even a single second to consider their total lack of qualifications for a high-stakes professional extraction? Absolutely not. They see that massive upfront cash, they completely ignore the fact that they can barely cross a busy street without causing a pileup, and they immediately accept the job. Just to give you a clearer picture of who exactly is funding this chaotic operation, let's talk about Kelvin for a second. He's an Instagram and YouTube presence who genuinely considers himself an elite lifestyle brand. He's known throughout the local underworld for hiring incredibly unqualified mercenaries at 4 times the going rate, mostly because he thinks throwing money around automatically makes him look powerful. He acts like this cinematic underworld boss, complete with flashy outfits and terrible one-liners, but his actual hiring practices are, frankly, terrible. He is basically funding a massive disaster waiting to happen. So, how does this incredibly unqualified team plan a high-value kidnapping? Surprisingly, they actually manage some decent ground-level intelligence gathering. First, they discover their target, Samir, isn't some heavily guarded kingpin. He's just a local coal businessman. Next, they somehow learn his highly specific daily routine. They find out that he sneaks off to smoke weed every single day at exactly 4 p.m. behind a local government school. With this perfect window of vulnerability identified, they plan a straightforward ambush to grab him with the whole crew right there in the schoolyard. I mean, it sounds simple, direct, and effective, right?
Well, that brings us to Section 4, the schoolyard brawl.
This right here perfectly highlights the massive gap between their expectation and reality. They envisioned executing a high-paying, precise kidnapping contract for a wealthy client like clockwork. They thought they'd roll in, grab the guy, and roll out looking like seasoned pros. But the reality of their operation is something entirely different. It devolves almost instantly into absolute mayhem, ridiculous amounts of friendly fire, and the blaring sound of approaching police sirens. In the very middle of this utter disaster, we get this frantic, perfectly chaotic line shouted from the middle of the scrum. "Hey, blind guy, if you can't see, why are you fighting? Why are you hitting your own guys?" The moment the fight breaks out, the plan evaporates entirely. The blind character, completely disoriented in the scuffle, begins violently attacking his own teammates because he literally cannot see the target he's supposed to be grabbing. And to make matters exponentially worse, the deaf character is entirely oblivious to the shouts and frantic screams from his friends, begging him to stop, turn around, and regroup. It is pure, unadulterated chaos in the middle of a public space. Bystanders witness this extreme violence happening right behind the school and immediately call the police. Through sheer dumb luck, and probably because everyone involved is just so deeply confused, the trio barely manages to grab their target, Samir, toss him in a vehicle, and flee the scene just as the police sirens are approaching. They actually pull it off, but that leads us directly into Section 5, the hidden gold twist. Just when it seems the trio has miraculously succeeded and is getting ready to hand their bruised captive over to Kelvin to collect their massive payout, the story takes a huge, high-stakes turn. Samir, realizing his time is almost up, makes a desperate, life-saving negotiation. He says, "If you let me go, I will make you rich. Only I know where the crores of gold are hidden." So here's the crucial point. Samir realizes he's about to be handed over to Kelvin, which he absolutely knows means certain doom. The power dynamic shifts instantly. Backed into a corner, he leverages a massive, unbelievable secret to save his own life. He reveals to the trio that an absolute fortune in gold, crores of it, a sum that makes Kelvin's wildly inflated kidnapping fee look like pocket change, is hidden exactly 20 kilometers away. He even gives them the precise coordinates to prove he isn't lying. He tells them it's buried high up on a nearby mountain, right near a specific temple, hidden securely under a recognizable rock. In a single instant, the trio goes from low-level, completely incompetent mercenaries to holding a golden ticket worth infinitely more than their original contract. They suddenly hold all the cards. Which leaves us with this final burning question. Will this chaotic trio successfully claim the hidden crores, or will their disastrous teamwork strike again? When your team communicates primarily through friendly fire, deafening silence, and utter confusion, securing buried treasure on a remote mountain might just be an impossible mission. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found this breakdown of their wildly chaotic operation as fascinating to learn about as it was to explain. Take care, and we'll see you next time.